2. So this is the track that's focused on virtualization. I'm Greg Nehib. I'm in service provider marketing at Cisco, and I focus on go-to-market for several different technologies, including virtualization. And I'm going to be here to chair the morning session, and I want to go ahead and introduce the first speaker. We have several presentations in these sessions that are rather short, so we may not have room for questions at the end, but I would encourage you to meet with the speakers when they come off stage if you have questions or follow-ups for them. But our first speaker, with no further ado, is Francois Lemarchand. Francois did an excellent presentation yesterday on some of the interdependencies between SDN and NFV, and so I think he deserves a round of applause here as he comes on stage to kick us off for the morning session. It's always difficult to go first. We have to get our minds moving again, but help me in welcoming Francois on stage. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for being there so early. So I'm basically responsible for the SDN product strategy for Ericsson. And my name is actually Francois Lemarchand, not Françoise, which is more like the female version of it. I realize I just have maybe a little bit too many slides, so I'm trying to be, short and, brief on each of those. The presentation today is really on how we basically implemented a VPN overlay in OpenDaylight. That has been a project led by Ericsson. And I'm going to explain a little bit the motivation, why we did that, and how we did it very briefly. Okay, so the first thing is, if you look at operators' networks, one of the mainstream services they have, of course, is managed VPNs, typically done by some MPLS VPN implementation. And if you look at what cloud and data center are changing, of course, is first virtualization of the IT applications. You can see in blue moving to some cloud somewhere. NFV then, actually apply the same model for some of the network services. And typically, you can think about, first a lot of the security services, value-added services, but also even some of the very basic connectivity functionalities. And that's a use case such as the virtual home gateway or virtual CPE. But then at the end, you still have a physical side that you need to connect through a physical network to some data center somewhere, right? So you need to interwork with some, transport technology or VPN to actually carry the bits from, the enterprise or customer location premises back to that data center where you host the NFV and the IT application. So this is really the topic of today. How do we realize that kind of VPN stitching, interworking connectivity between the cloud and the network? So there is different way to do it. And historically, if you look at the networks, if you look at access, IP core, data center networking, it all started in isolation, right? On different use cases, driven by different people, typically different ecosystem, different vendors. And what we've seen in the past is different technologies being applied to each of those segments, like access and transport had specific technologies like KTM, frame relay, and so on. IP core obviously always being IP centric, and early data center networking. There was a lot of let's say Ethernet use case and so on. Specific protocol has been deployed as overlay for the data center. But now, if you want to get this kind of end-to-end network slicing, if you want to get the dynamicity, if you want to get the simplicity of interconnecting the things end-to-end, then you basically have two options, right? You can say, let's keep different technologies, different operation groups, different OSS, and so on each of those segments. And then let's build some kind of more dynamic next-gen cross-domain automation that will basically configure each of those segments, stitch them together, and make the service work end-to-end. And that's obviously, a very valid approach. But what I'd like to point out, obviously, is that if you do that, you still have to maintain, of course, you will still maintain different operational teams, but it means you will have to keep different profiles, different skills, different tools between each of those segments. When you want to automate the provisioning, you have to deal with different service capabilities, different, models, so that makes it a bit more hard to actually automate this connectivity. And then finally, when you look at the data plane and, moving the bits across the different segments of the network, if you use different technologies, end-to-end, it creates a lot lot of complexity on how you map the QoS between the domains, how do you do the O&M, how do you deal with redundancy and failover and so on. Each of those stitching points becomes complex, right? How do I map Ethernet to IP, IP back to VXLAN or whatever, right? So our approach is something very similar to what happened before in IP, which is, for the last 10 to 20 years, what we've done is move IP further and further down to the access, down even to the access node. That was a seamless MPLS story. Still not very popular, but I think, if you look at the actual, let's say, network node implementation, IP has been pushed to as deep as the lowest CO in the hierarchy in the operators. And the reason why IP has been pushed further down is that it's not because you need IP in the metro or in the access, it's because it's simpler to have only one technology that does it all from the access to the core and not to the data center. So where I'm coming to is maybe something that is obvious to some of you, but I think our vision was very clear that let's not reinvent the wheel, and especially for the telco market, but I think it's applicable to enterprise to a large extent. Let's reuse all the good things we've done on IP networking inside the data center and as an overlay technology. And that simplifies a lot provisioning operations. You have one type of skills, one single way of provisioning the network end-to-end. It's like seamless MPLS. You just have to touch the endpoint with the right parameters, and automatically VPN pops up. And then it simplifies a lot redundancy, O&M, and fault management, and so on. Another thing that is important is that, when you do those kind of stitching or more manual configuration and so on, you also sometimes hit some scaling limits. And if you look at the early, let's say, NFV requirement, you had some NFV like a virtual BNG, virtual P gateway, you need to connect to an access node, and maybe you get some infrastructure VPN service just to carry, let's say, some mobile traffic from the access to your NFV. And those infrastructure VPN, they are not unique per VPN or even per customer or even per service. So you don't have so many of those, right? I have a VPN for 2G, one for 3G, one for fixed line, I don't know. So it's not so many VPN, not so many routes, because the endpoints are basically your nodes, right, on the network. So that is manageable. But I think what we see is, emergence of other profiles of services. And one could be business VPN. If you really want to extend and stitch the IP VPN that you offer to an enterprise back to the data center, then it's as many VPNs as you have enterprises customer, or even more, depending on the specific topologies and use case. That means also millions of routes that you have to learn if you want to optimize routing for those use cases. If you look at residential, we have some model, like virtual CPE we are developing in Ericsson, where we are basically dedicating one pseudo wire for each and every subscriber. So it means tens of millions of pseudo wires, right, that you will have to end up and connect in a dynamic way back to the data center. So here also it doesn't make sense to automate this through a northbound orchestration system that typically doesn't have this level of dynamicity. And reusing, again, the IP MPLS tool we had, like such as BGP VPN, will simplify tremendously and scale this type of application. Another thing is flexibility. We can reuse all the good tools we have, like IP, CMP. Seems simple, but you all know, in reality, it's a whole kind of worm, and it's being solved over and over. Let's reuse all the knowledge we have on the treating properly CMP. Building topologies in an efficient way, like hub and spoke, extranet, and so on. That was all the kind of tools that, when you reuse the IP MPLS toolbox, you can basically, easily, reuse and extend. And again, this is well defined, this is still proven, this is interoperable. So why reinvent the wheel? I think that's a bit of the question. And when I say topology, there is the service connectivity within a VPN. This is also the physical topology of a service. You may have different data center, different endpoints you want to interconnect. Again, playing with BGP, import route, export route, and so on, changing next hop, and so on. You can create service topology that will create some physical chain across your network, chaining different data center, different location, different pieces together. So anyway, this is basically reuse of something we all know. So what's new? You ask me, okay. Well, actually, it's new because if you look at data center technology, if you look at OpenStack, if you look at Neutron, where it is today, it's very, let's say, legacy, right? It's being designed like a 90-ish type of network design, which is really, very basic Ethernet segments, routers, and so on. And I think the first step is actually move the data center from this legacy model to something that is on par with modern IP networking. So on par with something we had for 10 years maybe. But that's basically the first step, right? And then we can get back all the nice tools we have about traffic engineering and topology handling, policy routing, and so on. Of course, it doesn't stop there, right? I mean, our ambition is not simply to replicate what we've been doing for years. I think this is just a first logical step, and then beyond that, you want to leverage SDN to actually do better things, right, than what we are doing today on the IP networking field. And some of the better things are yet to be defined, but at least there is some non-components being able to, really do similarly to NFV, like a proper abstraction between the hardware and the software control plane, having some open data plane hardware. That's something new. Having different development models, right? I mean, about collaborative development on open source platform, delivering more of, continuous delivery of softwares and so on. That's not something that we've been able to do very successfully. So basically, this is the evolution. Yes, it's not new for IP, but it's new for data center, and it won't stop at, parity with IP capabilities. It will go beyond that, with SDN. So how we do that? You can see some simple illustration. You see the data center is basically one logical PE, right? So you get the SDN controller being the control plane of that PE, and you get the forwarding elements being your vSwitch or even your top-of-rack switch. They are like a virtual line card of a router, right? So that's I guess, a model that is embraced by many other vendors. So what specifically we are doing, we are using Neutron as a northbound interface, so it's really easily pluggable to any kind of OpenStack environment, or including VMware as well as an option. Of course, we also offer additional APIs to be able to extend Neutron today, because it doesn't have all the tools to do the proper, cover the proper SDN capabilities like service chaining and VPN. So we are offering native APIs on top of it, but I think the obvious ambition is to increase Neutron or enhance Neutron in such a way that he will be able to offer the same services. And the next presentation from Thomas Morin from Orange will cover actually that Neutron extension. Southbound, again, different approach, but our approach has been initially to use OpenFlow and OVSDB as a southbound protocol. We don't use it like the traditional OpenFlow, reactive learning and to do like some Ethernet services, or we don't need to be like granular to the level of a TCP flow. We can be, we don't have to. We can use OpenFlow simply to download the IP/MPLS FIB, right? So it's more like an internal protocol between the controller and the forwarder. Why OpenFlow VSDB? There's been a lot of debate in the industry. I think one of the things we have is, again, openness of the data plane. And one good example we have in our booth, actually, if you want to go check that out, is the fact that you can take, for instance, a SmartNIC that will do hardware acceleration for your data center payload. And that SmartNIC, by default, will emulate an OVS switch. So if you can program an OVS switch being your data plane element for a virtual router, then by using some standard protocols, you will get a whole ecosystem of hardware elements that will be able to accelerate your networking. Then, toward the network, signaling BGP VPN for layer 3, EVPN for layer 2. And then from the encapsulation, like other vendors, MPLS over GRE was the first choice. But more and more, we will be evolving to VXLAN, as we can use VXLAN as an encapsulation for BGP as well. That is the natural evolution. And that there we get, better like load balancing capabilities, and we also get, a better ecosystem from a data center standpoint in terms of support. Okay, so what's unique? Again, what's new? Fine, you've seen that from other vendors. What's new is that we do that on OpenDaylight. And as you can see, in OpenDaylight is very rich. And there is many different use cases, many different services that have been upstreamed to OpenDaylight. So it's a very rich platform. Today, one of the issues of OpenDaylight is a bit segmented, right? Because different vendors have upstreamed different use cases, and they kind of work in isolation, right? One from the other. So you can see some example. There is already an overlay technology that is called NetVirt, using Neutron, OVSDB, VXLAN. It's more like a traditional layer 2 virtualization service. You have some service chaining capabilities that have been upstream in OpenDaylight. There is some transport capabilities in OpenDaylight. And what we do as Ericsson, we actually contribute to this VPN service, that is that VPN IP-based overlay. So it's basically the VPN service that is the fundamental, let's say, infrastructure piece of it. And there is also the BGP VPN stack and interworking with that BGP VPN stack that is required. So those purple blocks are the one where Ericsson is leading the project within Open Daylight. You can see the benefit of open source and the value of open source, and more important, the value of a community-driven open source platform when you have many major vendors, participating, such as Open Daylight, is that you can reuse work that has been done by others, right? That's the goal of a community. And we are reusing, northbound, some Neutron capabilities, southbound, the OpenFlow plugin, the OVSDB plugin. So we can reuse some elements. And this is the first phase, but what we have done already is extend that so that you can also mix service chaining together with VPN, so not two different use cases in isolation, but you can really combine those two functionalities in the same overlay. And then, moving forward, additional security and ONM capabilities will be enhanced as well. So I think that's a great illustration of a value of a community-driven platform, because what it means is that when you want to build a new application, when you want to create a new service, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can basically focus on what brings value, what's new, what's innovative, and you can reuse a lot of the existing platform infrastructure that has been, done by others and for other purposes. And what you can do, you have to reuse, of course, all the backend infrastructure, ONM, security, database, clustering, and so on. And then after that, you can pick and choose what are the service components you need. Do you need service chaining? Do you need routing? Do you need an IP stack? Do you need BGPLS? Do you need PCEP to talk to the external world? Do you need netconf to go configure a router? Do you need OpenFlow, OVSDB to talk to a vSwitch or VS? You can pick and choose, what are the service components you need to build your application and focus on what brings value. And what brings value can be fully open source. That's one model. It can also be closed source, as soon as you keep that as a self-contained entity that you can easily plug into the open source, obviously. Again, one of the benefits, you can say, I can build a simple application. It's like a PaaS. It's like a platform programming, because now I have all the tools to automatically scale, distribute, secure my application. So the simple thing could be an application that works in isolation, and it will just use the infrastructure to actually be scalable and carrier grade. You can compose. One example, service chaining plus VPN. I need both. Plus overlay. I need both on the same thing. So now I can use, in Open Daylight, I can use the MDSAL to basically have those two services interwork together and feed the same view of the topology and use the same sourcebound plugin to program the same entity. So you can have one forwarding element that will provide multiple service, one to the other. So you don't have to service chain across a lot of VMs. You can actually program one common forwarding element with different functions. So that's another benefit of using the same platform. And then finally, you can extend. You can say, I can reuse something that has been done already, but through again, the MDSAL and the API redirection, you can enhance this existing code, but you can enhance it in such a way that you can keep it modular. You can create a new plugin that will enhance an existing plugin, and that's make it extremely modular if you want to maintain this moving forward. Why do we believe it's very critical and very relevant? It's basically, if you look at Linux, and the success of Linux has been, some core component infrastructure. The kernel provides you, like memory management and file system and so on. But then each and every vendor has been able to provide a plugin, a driver, for instance, to adapt Linux to a specific hardware, for instance. And that's why Linux runs on so many different targets, from a printer to a PC to a watch. And then also Linux comes with a lot of free and open source functionalities, such as, all the major Linux distributions, they will come with a prepackaged, HTTP server, security, SSL encryption, database, and so on. So when you want to build an application on Linux, again, you want to build an e-commerce application, a CDN application, whatever, you can reuse all of this, and you can be extremely veloce in the way you build the application. And that's why Linux today is serving more than 90% of the content on the internet. And I think, that's what we want to do with networking now, and that's what's really disruptive. If you really manage to create a community around a platform, an open source platform, you can eventually come to something that is like Linux of networking, where you can get velocity and efficiency for the whole industry and benefit both the vendors and the operators in such a way that we all collaborate around a unique platform. And I think that is really the motivation on why we are doing this IP-based overlay, but within a community-driven platform. There is some initial overhead to do that, but I think the benefit long-term are tremendous. So I'm done, I guess, on time.
Thank you.
Thank you.